I want to talk about how some people can only be invited into uniformity with others. So, what I mean by that is that some people need an invitation to actually have a mutually beneficial rapport with other people. And I think I think I'm going to call this first group of people intention conscious individuals. And they are individuals because they are in divide. And so this first group of people I am a part of. I am one of them. I have to be invited into a dynamic no, that's not the right word. I have to be invited into a relationship in order to have that relationship um, in order to have that relationship blossom into a mutual rapport. I can't just force my way into having a empathetic dialogue. I can't. I see other people do it, and I think that they are really lucky people because they have a knack for that. They can just go in to some place and they immediately get to heart mode, right? So they immediately are comfortably situated with other people's emotions in a shared manner, shall we say, very empathetic. But I can't do that. I can't I can't force that. I have to be invited for that to occur, for any of that blossoming to happen. Now, the second set of people who I am not a part of, who can force the blossoming to occur, they are what I will term attentious, sorry, not attentious, God, attention conscious inadditionals. And so what this means is that they are an inadditional as opposed to an individual. So an individual uh, pertains to someone who is in divide, so is conflicted um, when observed in social interaction. And an inadditional is the opposite of that. So this is somebody who is not conflicted, who is completely at ease, and they are immediately among the culture, shall we say, among the cultivation of social interaction. They immediately become one with the oneness. And whether somebody is an introvert or an extrovert is irrelevant to this difference between the intention conscious individual and the attention conscious individual, because there are many introverted people who are attention conscious, because introversion is in itself a kind of codependency And the only reason why people think they have this false notion that introverted people, that they have, some superiority over extroverted people. This whole false notion of that is based on the the um, the indifference of the mode of functioning of an introverted person. So, an introverted person might spend a hell of a lot of time, you know, deliberating and, you know, doing what are quote unquote smart activities. But the introverted person, what people who believe that false notion that introverted people are superior are missing, what people are missing is that the introverted people, they are doing all that learning because they are in a deliberative mode. They're essentially catching up. It's not because they have a real intrigue in being superior to other people, but it's because they actually catching up because they are hardwired to be more holistic in their interpretation of reality, so it takes them longer to form the same conclusions that an extrovert might form on the fly. But anyway, I digress. Okay, I just wanted to point out that you don't need to be an introvert or an extrovert. That it's irrelevant if which one you are. You can be an introverted or extroverted intention conscious individual, and you could be an introverted or extroverted attention conscious individual. But it's pretty much irrelevant concerning this distinction. But anyway, to circle back to what this video is about, intention conscious individuals, because I count myself among them, we have to be invited in to have heart-to-heart rapport, mutual rapport, or else we will sympathize, but that's basically us, thinking, oh well, that would suck if it happened to me, but that you can't really start a rapport from sympathy. But we won't immediately empathize because we have to be invited to empathize. We have to be invited to take part in friendships and families. Now we can have different sort of, we can have different sort of friendships and different sort of bonds that are based on sympathy without without necessarily being invited to partake. But the bonds that are based on sympathy are more they're more rational bonds. So it isn't that heart to heart per se. And I think people who can relate, who also are intention conscious, they have to agree with me on this, is that we are too realistic to on our own create a truly tangible connection with other people, because we're too rational. So, like, you would need somebody who is attention conscious and somewhat irrational to sort of bring about a binding agent of sorts to the formation of a culture, which, a culture connects people in an empathetic way to one another, whereas, you know, it what you have outside of a culture, let's say you're an outcast, outlaw, individual, so in divide. Let's say you're there. You don't have the means, you know, on your own or with other individuals to create a and to create an empathetic um, system that sees everybody as, on the same level of consideration and support. You don't have that. I don't have that, and it's a shortcoming. It's a shortcoming if I'm considering, you know, my abilities compared to people who are attention conscious. I have this shortcoming where I have to be invited to do any real, people good. I have to be invited by people to really do them any real people goodness, or else I just come off as someone is who has no idea about what they are really going through as an inadditional. That's why you gotta take that term, right? I coined that term in this, I believe, of an inadditional. It's a different, it's a different kind of person. It's an attention conscious person, and the inadditional, as opposed to the individual, doesn't need to be invited. They don't need to be invited. They just, you know, become part of become part of any group because they are, whether introvert or extrovert, they are hardwired to be, um, you know, people do-gooders. You know, whereas as an intention conscious individual, I am not hardwired to uh, do people goodness, right? I'm hardwired to do fact, perception, um, and and concept goodness. I'm hardwired to do fact and concept goodness, but I'm not hardwired to do people and experience goodness or event goodness. I'm not hardwired for that, and so I have to be invited in to create that sort of rapport. Anyway, yeah, and I suppose this is where I think this distinction between the individual and the inadditional is where you get the mythos for vampires, right? The vampire has to be invited in, and the vampire has a thirst for human blood, and blood can be seen as a symbol for empathetic culture. Blood, lifeblood, culture, right? And so, the vampire is like someone like me. It's someone who's thing oriented. So it's somebody who is um, who is not focus-wise preoccupied with people doesn't mean, somebody like me never thinks about people. It doesn't mean the vampire never thinks about, the animate objects, but it's just they're preoccupied with the inanimate objects, you know. So, so the animate objects, they become this, this rarity, in a sense that they become valuable, because if you're preoccupied with, inanimate objects, then, you don't really develop um, the tools to acquire animate objects. Whereas if you're preoccupied with animate objects, you do develop the tools to acquire animate objects. But being vampire, you don't. You don't. And instead, so it becomes this addiction. You take more out of what is offered than what is actually being offered, because you don't know what is actually being offered, because you don't think with a preoccupation, um, of animate objects in mind. You think with a preoccupation of inanimate objects in mind. Anyway, okay. But yeah, I think that's where the mythos of vampires comes from, is intention conscious individuals, and it makes sense to me. Yeah. So there are individuals, and then there are inadditionals, and those who are inadditionals, you people, I envy you. You got the magic. You got the mightiest touch, even if sometimes you're touching too much. Have a good day. Peace, meow.